Hi, welcome to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith, and in this video we're going to learn the 1 to 6 player game Charterstone, designed by Jamey Stegmaier and published by Stonemaier Games. The Kingdom of Green Gully has always been a prosperous place to live, but the Forever King has chosen you, and the other players, as special citizens with unique skills to head out beyond the kingdom's borders and colonize new lands. Charterstone is a competitive legacy experience, and that means that over the course of 12 games, you'll be unlocking new elements that will permanently change the way your game is played. And this will take the form of stickers that you'll place and information that you'll permanently write on different boards and cards. In this way, at the end of your 12 sessions, you'll have a copy of Charterstone that's unique compared to anyone else's. And although future games that you play will not unlock those new elements, you can continue to play Charterstone just like any other game in your collection and experience it in new ways. Alternatively, you'll be able to purchase this separate recharge pack that replaces any components that were affected by your first 12 games, allowing you to replay from the beginning using the other side of your double-sided game board. You can even play the game solo using these included rules, which I'll leave you to discover on your own, but in the description of this video, I'll include a link to them if you'd like to check it out. Instead here, I'll be teaching you the rules for 2 to 6 players, which are covered in what is known as the Chronicle. This booklet is unique, as it has the rules required to get you started, but also many empty spaces that will get filled in with stickers that you unlock as you play, changing the game as you go. Aside from looking at what's necessary to get your first game started, we won't be spoiling anything in this video that relates to any of the future surprises that you'll encounter as you play. All I want to do here is give you enough information so you can get started with confidence. So join me at the table and let's learn how to play. As we're about to see, aside from the rules and these game boards, there are a variety of smaller boxes in the main box. And you're not meant to open any of these until you're instructed, and we'll begin by opening up this one called Index. Inside here, you'll find a series of individually wrapped decks, and at this time, you can take each of them out. Now unwrap the plastic from them without examining the individual cards too closely, as they'll contain secrets for you to explore later. Just be sure not to mix them up, because once unwrapped, you'll be putting these back into the index box in the same order. If you look in the bottom right-hand corner of the cards, you'll find numbers that provide the correct sequential order that these should stay in. Don't worry if you're going through the numbers and it seems like some of them are missing. This was done for production reasons. The main thing is that the cards are put back in order, with the number 1 here on the far left. Now, during the game, you'll be told to extract or remove certain cards from the index, and the Chronicle tells us to extract number 1 at the very beginning of our first game. When you see italicized blue text at the top of a card, this is story narration that should be read aloud to all of the players. Now, I'm going to skip over those segments in this video, but make sure you don't when you're playing. Instead, I'll focus on explaining the text beneath, which presents you with the rules you'll need to play the game. In this case, we're being told to place the board in the center of the table, and remember, it is double-sided, but once you start playing on one side, keep using it throughout the entire campaign. Now, one thing you might not realize is that this card, like many in the game, is actually a large sticker, which you're now told to peel off and place onto the matching Story 1 space on page 6 of the Chronicle. It'll look like this when you're done, and then you'll put this leftover remnant into the box that you'll find labeled Archive. In this way, when your campaign is over, you'll know exactly which cards you used and need to replace in the index if you pick up the recharge pack. Just ensure that before you archive anything, you completely follow any instructions on it. For example, at the bottom of this card, it tells us to extract card 2 from the index, which we have over here. This tells us to open the Scriptorium tuck box, where the general components of the game will be stored between sessions, and you can unpack everything here and set it beside the board. You'll find 36 metal coins and 12 each of the metal, grain, wood, coal, clay, and pumpkin resources. To make it a little easier for me to move things around on the table during this video, I'll set all of these off to the side and just bring them back out as necessary. There's also a Charterstone die and progress token, which you'll place on the space of this track that matches your number of players. In this video, I'm going to be setting up a 3-player game, so we'd place the token on space 3P. I won't be showing it each time, but just know that I'll be sticking these new cards into the Chronicle as I finish with each one. And as we move this one to the archive, we can see we're now told to extract card number 3. This explains that the village board is divided into 6 main charters that are separated by the graphical elements built into the artwork. Each will contain 6 faint hexagonal plots, as well as a banner and that charter's symbol. Players should now seat themselves by the empty charter that they wish to use throughout the entire campaign, and then go into the game box and find the charter chest that matches your emblem as shown here. Then open and remove its contents. Inside you'll find 2 workers, 1 small and 1 big, as well as 12 influence tokens and a victory point marker that you'll place, along with the other players, on the 0 space of this victory point track. The rest of your components you'll keep in front of yourself. You're then told to extract cards 200 to 205 from the index and give each player the one that matches their charter. This will be you for the rest of the campaign, so you can write your name or anything you like into the top space here. Any characters that will not be used in the campaign, you can then place into their matching charter boxes, which are then kept in the main game box. We're now told to move on to card 4, which tells you to also pull out cards 5 through 10, and each player will be given the one that matches their charter. If you have less than 6 players, set aside any unused ones for now. On the card you were given is a sticker, which you'll remove and then place into any of the empty plot spaces within your personal charter. Which space you choose within your charter doesn't matter, just as long as they're all oriented in the same direction. If the building card you removed a sticker from has a crate symbol, like these do, in the upper right-hand corner, it is then kept in front of that player as a constructed building card, which can then be used later in the game. If there was no crate here, then the card would just be sent to the archive box after the building sticker was placed. We're now told to pull out card 11, which says that if you have less than 6 players, some of the charters will be inactive, but those areas are still a part of this growing village, which means that you place the matching stickers from their cards into those charters. So it will look something like this when you're all done. The leftover constructed building cards from the inactive charters are then placed onto this advancement board, which is kept nearby, and we'll come back to see how this works in just a moment. The game will later explain ways for those inactive charters to grow, but if you'd like them to behave like human players, you can read and use the Automa rulebook, but it's not advised to do this until after you've played your first couple of games and are familiar with the general rules. Next, you're told to pull card 12 from the index, which also tells you to gather cards 206 through 218. 8 of these are assistants with this back, which you'll then combine with any other cards already on the advancement map, shuffling them together into a single deck. Then reveal 5 of them, placing them face up onto the 5 empty spaces of this board. 5 of the cards are objectives, which will have this back, and you'll shuffle these into a face-down pile on the objective mat, which is also kept nearby. Then reveal 3 of them, placing them face up. Card 12 now tells you to review the rules explaining how to play, which we'll go over in a moment. But then it says to put that card into the archive without removing its sticker and extract card 13 from the index, which we'll come back to a little bit later. For the first game only, each player is given $4 in coins, and then you roll the Charterstone die until one of the player's symbols is revealed. They become the first player, and you can give them the die as a reminder of this. And that's the setup for Game 1. In Charterstone, you're going to be constructing new buildings, gaining assistance, acquiring resources, and trying to complete objectives, all in an effort to appease the Forever King as you expand the kingdom. While the campaign is played over 12 separate games, each game is broken down into a series of turns, starting with the first player and then going clockwise around and around the table. On your turn, you must either place a worker from your personal supply onto any building, or take back all of your workers from the board. And although these are sized differently, they work the same way. Whenever you place a worker, you use the building following 3 steps in order. First, if another worker was already there, even if it's one of yours, return it to its controlling player. Then you pay the cost shown towards the left of the building by returning those items from your personal supply back to the general supply. If you can't pay the cost, then you can't go to that location. Then finally, you gain all or part of the benefits shown on the right side of the building. So let's take a moment right now and learn how the different locations work. First of all, there are the stickered locations that we added to each charter. These all work essentially the same way. After placing a worker there, there is no cost, but then you collect the pictured resource. So in this case, the yellow player would gain 1 piece of iron, while going here would give the player 1 piece of coal. When collected, these are put in front of the players in their personal areas. Keep in mind that all of the resources and coins in the game are limited, and that means if something is not in the general supply, then it cannot be collected until some are returned there again later. In the center of the board is the Commons, which has 5 different buildings that you could assign a worker to. If you go to the Treasury, then you must return any one single resource to the general supply in order to collect a single coin. On the back of the rulebook, you'll find the sack symbol along with every other icon you might come across when playing the game, in case you forget what something means. If you go to the market, you pay 1 coin and any 1 resource, and then collect any 1 face-up card from the advancement mat. These are placed face up in front of you. In fact, everything that you collect in the game is considered public information and always kept visible so that anyone can see what you have. I should point out quickly that the first edition printing of the rulebook says that you may collect a face-down card with this action, but that was a mistake. Only face-up cards can be taken. Either way, after a card has been collected, you immediately replace it with the top one from this deck. If you take one of these from the advancement mat, it counts as a constructed building card that you can later use to open the crate pictured here. However, you might collect one of these assistants instead. They will show a bonus here at the bottom that you can collect anytime you perform its listed activity. Also, the first time you take one of these, if it doesn't have a name printed into the area here at the top, you may give it one by writing into that space. Some actions in the game will allow you to discard advancement cards, so you'll keep an area nearby for that. And if the draw deck would ever run out, shuffle the discard pile into a new one. Also, if a new advancement card would be added to the game while playing, you immediately shuffle the new cards and any discards into the draw deck. A variety of different types of cards can end up in this area, and they can often be distinguished by the symbols found here at the top. And if you're ever told to gain a certain type of advancement, you can choose one from those face up here that match that type, if any. If you go to the grandstand, you place one of your influence tokens onto any one face-up objective card, if you satisfy its requirements as printed at the bottom. For example, if I had at least 6 coins, I could go here, and each player may score each objective once per game. Then, as shown here, you gain 5 victory points. As you gain points, you show this by moving your marker that number of spaces forward on the victory point track. To complete the grandstand action, you then advance this progress token on the track so it's getting closer to this blue light symbol. You'll also find the objective symbol here as a reminder to always advance this token when one is claimed. On your turn, if you advance the progress token onto a space with this boat symbol, it means you may place one of your influence tokens onto this reputation track found in the upper right-hand corner of the board. The first token placed here in each game is put on the space matching the player count, so we'd go on to the 3P space. Each new token added here is then put on the next empty space that leads towards the ocean end. These will be worth points at the end of the game, as we'll see a little bit later. This is the space for income, but the rules for this symbol are not unlocked yet, so you can ignore it for now. Going back to the Commons, we'll skip over the Zeppelin for now, as it's used when adding new buildings, and you won't have any of those yet. Likewise, we'll also come back to the Charterstone in a moment. But for now, let's take a look at this cloud port space, which is found in the upper left-hand corner of the board. A space like this, or any that shows a hand symbol as its benefit, will allow you to sell a variable amount of a commodity back to the general supply. And to do this, you pick any space within this quota box that doesn't have an influence token, and then place one of yours there, returning the listed commodity on the left in the amount shown above it. So to go here, here, or here, I would need to discard 3 cards that I have with this symbol on their back, like perhaps these 3. Then, depending on which of these 3 spaces I decided to go into, I'd either get a bonus point, be able to add an influence token to the reputation track, or get nothing extra. However, no matter what space you go into, you'll always get the 3 points shown at that location. I also think it would be good to clarify that the influence token you place when taking the cloud port action is the one that you paid as a cost to go there. In other words, if our blue player wanted to go here next, they'd first return the black player's piece to them, and then pay this influence cost by putting it directly onto the quota space that they intend to fulfill. Going back to the card we last pulled from the index, we're told that an important part of Game 1 is for each player to use the Charterstone building located in the Commons. Doing this will let you unlock the crate that's shown on the constructed building card that you started with, or even on one that you might have collected from the advancement board. Either way, just note that you may never unlock a crate if it still has its building sticker here. Now, to open your crate, you'll need to place a worker on the Charterstone space and put 2 of your influence cubes in the general supply, along with 4 coins. Now, if you'd like, you can stop the video right here and just get to playing, coming back once someone has taken this Charterstone action. There'll even be a link in the description of this video that will return you right to this moment. Or, if you want, you can just keep watching. After paying for the Charterstone action, you'll refer to the number on the crate that you're opening and look it up on the index guide, which is found both on this sheet and on the inside of the index lid. The numbers on the row across from your crate number will tell you which cards to collect from the index, and the heading above will tell you what to do with them. For example, with crate 2, we're told to pull out cards 43, 44, and 233, which are all listed under the gain column. This means the player adds them to their personal area unless they get a persona as indicated here, which is immediately placed inside of their charter chest. Now that we've collected our new cards, the crate is sent to the archives, and we'll check the benefits side of this action, and sure enough, we gain 5 victory points. The progress track also reminds us here that each time a crate is opened, we advance 1 space. Our card 13 now tells us that after the first crate is unlocked, we should pull card 14 and then place this one into the archive. 14 provides us with a new sticker to put in the rulebook, which explains how to construct a building, which is perfect because one of our players just opened a crate that provided them with 2 new ones. When doing this, you need to send a worker to the Zeppelin and then pay 3 influence to the general supply, along with the 4 resources shown on the building that you want to construct. You'll then remove the sticker from the building you paid for and place it into any of the empty plots of your charter. This will add a new location where any player can assign workers to gain new benefits. Also, as shown here, placing a new building gains you 5 victory points. As well, you'll notice that construction advances the progress token. As a reminder, if the card you've peeled a building sticker from has no crate pictured here, then send it directly to the archive box. Otherwise, it stays in your personal area as a crate that you can unlock later by going to the Charterstone building. I should also point out that any number shown below a building is the victory points it will provide at the end of the campaign. As you've noticed, we've been using these influence tokens to place them on cards, the board, and sometimes to go right into the general supply. But the key thing to understand is that these are limited. In other words, when you run out, you will not be able to take any actions that would require them. Also, when you place an influence token, it cannot be moved or removed until the end of the game. Now that said, there are some effects that may allow you to regain influence, but those can only be taken from the general supply, if any are there. And if you do run out of influence, then at the start of each of your turns, you'll advance the progress token 1 space, which will still gain you any benefits that might be shown on the progress track. Alright, well, going back to card 14, we're now told to extract 15, which explains the rules for personas. When we gained one of these earlier, we put it into our charter box because these cannot be used right away. But you might have noticed these have a special ability at the bottom. And at the start of each new game you play, you can select any one of the personas from your chest to use, giving you access to its ability. Later games will also instruct you to mark this triangle in as you use those personas, which will grant you additional points at the end of the campaign. Before moving on, I'd like to clarify something about abilities like the one that we see here on this persona. It says that after using a building with a coal cost, you gain a victory point. But to be clear, this will only trigger if coal is specifically a part of the cost. For example, by going to the building here, you must spend 1 coal and then you get 2 coins. So this is a building action that would trigger this ability. But if instead we had gone to the treasury where any resource can be spent, even if we'd used coal, this ability would not activate. Because coal was not specifically a cost, we could have just as easily have gone to this building by using a pumpkin. With personas understood, you're now instructed to take card 16. This explains that when the progress token advances to this final space of its track, you've triggered the final round of the game. So any players left to take turns would do so, and then the game is over. Card 16 is then placed into this guidepost spot where you'll refer to it once the game actually ends. So again, feel free to stop the video if you'd like and continue playing, returning once you've gotten to that final round. Or stick with me and we'll wrap things up right now. After game 1 is over, the guidepost here instructs us to pull card 17 while placing this into the archive. In player order, you're now told to gain victory points from the reputation track. The player with the most tokens here will gain 10 points. Second most gains 7 and third most gains 4. Players who are tied at any of those positions will each gain the full points offered. However, players with no tokens on this track can gain nothing here. Next, check to see if you have any cards with this symbol on them, and if so, they will score you points. Now check the victory track to see how many of these glory stars you've passed, including any that you might currently be on. And you'll find one of these at every 10-point space. That means our black player here has gained 2, and both the blue and yellow player have 3 each. Before continuing, card 17 tells us to pull card 18, where we learn that for each star gained, you fill in any 1 star on the back of your charter chest. At the beginning of each game, you'll start with the indicated items at the end of any rows that you've completely filled in. And again, the symbols here are explained on the back of the rulebook, and some may even refer to components that won't be available until later in the campaign. Now the player, or players, if tied, with the most victory points on the track will fill in one of these trophies on the other side of their charter chest, and these will be worth a certain number of victory points at the end of the campaign. All non-winners will now name their charter, writing it within their banner. And as a show of humility, each winning charter, as well as each inactive one, will have their banners named by the non-winners as well. The village banner, which is shown here in the upper left-hand corner, will get filled in at a later time. Now gather all of your player pieces, including any coins, resources, and cards you might have, as these will carry over into Game 2. In later games, you won't always get to take everything with you, but for now you can. If you're taking a break between gaming sessions, you can also store all of this in your charter chest. But at this point, you're told to extract card 19. However, I think you're ready to take on the rest all by yourself. So give this a read and continue on from there. I'll be putting a link in the description of this video to a frequently asked questions document managed by Stonemaier Games, where they'll be addressing any important corrections they've found since the release of the game. And don't forget to check the front of the Chronicle if you'd like to see rules for how you can add and drop players during a campaign. That said, if you have any questions about anything that you saw here, don't hesitate to put them in the comments below, and I'll gladly answer them as soon as I get a chance. But until the next episode, thanks for watching.